Where do you need to be reminded that you're stronger than you think? Hmm. Today's word is resilience. And resilience is the capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficult situations. It's a toughness. It's similar words are adaptability, flexibility, pliability, suppleness. All of those things are it's the way you respond when adversity strikes. So I used to think that it meant stuff and suppress. If we're not talking about it, if we're not looking at it, if we're not dealing with it, then it's not really happening. As long as I am faking it to make everybody think I'm okay, I'm resilient. But that's not what resilience is. It's kind of like with the tornadoes this week. The wind can howl and scream and throw fits. It can break branches off of trees, but big rooted, deeply rooted trees can withstand all of that storm. Now, there are some that their roots are a little shallower. They may be toppled over, they may be picked up and lifted and thrown somewhere else. But the ones whose roots are deeply rooted, like being deeply rooted in God's word, can withstand the storms. I've had seasons that truly broke my heart. They broke me in so many ways. And each time I would turn to the word and turn to what God is telling me in that moment, and I would find a way to keep my spirit from breaking. I wouldn't keep my spirit from breaking. God would keep my spirit from breaking. But it was because I was rooting myself into Him. See, each hard season developed something more in me. And we're not talking calluses, although there were a few of those along the way. Uh, it developed a certain level of character. It developed a certain level of compassion, a certain level of grit, sauciness. It's it's not about bouncing back, not about going back to what you were and what you were doing before. It's resilience is about what God is building in the process of those tough seasons. I had to decide in that moment what type of person I wanted to be to show up in that moment. I could have been the one, Scarlett O'Hara, fiddle-dee-dee, throw my head in the sand. I could have been the one that was angry and lashing out and bitter, or I could be the one that took a moment and really sought after God's heart and asked the questions, what's the lesson in this season? What am I to be doing in this season? So today's verse is suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. See, when things come at us and they're beating us down and they're beating us down and they're beating us down, if we're focused on the storm, we will never see what God has for us ahead of that storm. But if we're focused on God, the winds can howl all around us and we can have a complete and utter peace in our spirit and our soul. I remember years ago, we had 3 kids. All 3 of our kids are 3 years and 1 month apart from oldest to youngest. So I laughingly say that I cried a lot those first 4 years of our marriage just because of sheer exhaustion and Mike and I were still trying to figure out how to be a couple. And I mean, there was just a lot going on. And a few years into our marriage, our oldest daughter was about 8 years old. And we got a notification from one of the states where my husband used to live that said, "You're being charged with paternity of this child." And I remember sitting in the car and him handing me this letter, and our marriage wasn't in the best place at that time. But as he handed me the letter, I'm reading through it, and DNA was still very new on the forefront at that time. And I looked at him, I said, "Okay, well, my suggestion is you do a DNA test, not just a blood test. And then once you do the DNA test, if it proves she's your child, then you let her know that you would have been involved if you had a known, and you go for visitation and get to know your daughter." I was saying those words, but that wasn't what I was feeling inside. What I was feeling inside was, how is this going to change the birth order of my children? How is this going to affect our family? We're already broke. How are we going to afford child support? But I was choosing in that moment to lean into God, that He had all of that under control, and that I needed to show up to be the woman and the wife that my husband needed me in that moment. It wasn't easy, and I cried a lot, but in that, there was a quiet strength that grew, and that's what resilience is. I couldn't see the outcome of what was going to happen with these tests and stuff, but what I could see was that God was in control, that He was doing a work in me. I wasn't pointing a finger at my husband saying, "Oh my God," all this happened before we were married. I had no say over any of that stuff. But what I did have a say in is how I chose my words and how I responded versus reacted. That right there will cause a strong sense of resilience in you. So I love the challenge questions today, because one of the challenge questions is how has God used adversity to strengthen your character? And I would like to say, for me, it's been all day, every day. I don't know what that looks like for you, but for me, it's been all day, every day. I I'm not saying I live a hard life. There are people that live much harder lives than me, but there have been challenges with my health, with my kids, with my husband, with our businesses, that all day, every day, there is something that is causing friction. And I have to choose how I am going to respond instead of react in those situations. And so that in itself is helping to strengthen my character. I might admit also that this weekend I was not the best at it. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I was not the best at it. There was times this weekend I didn't want to be around myself, much less anybody else have to be around me. And I think it was from sheer exhaustion. But you know what? I'm aware of it. And because I'm aware of it, I can start to having a conversation with God and asking Him, what is this? What's bubbling up that I need to deal with? Then the second question is, what spiritual muscles are you developing right now? Goes back to just what I just said. Exercising with God. Okay, God, I'm being quite ugly this weekend. What do I need to do to fix that? And then where do you need to be reminded that you are stronger than you think? Because you are. You are so much stronger than you think. You are more capable than you think in so many ways. And if you don't think you're capable, find one thing this week that is way out of your comfort zone, that you are totally uncomfortable with, and do it. For me, it was pushing record on these morning devotionals. There was a lot of junk going on in the back of my head telling me that this would not be meaningful. Nobody would get anything out of it. I wasn't qualified. There were so many words that were coming up in the back of my head with this. But then there was a exercise I did the other day, and in that exercise, I was reminded that I was leaking my power and I was betraying my value and what God is seeing in me. And one of the things that it reminded me of was that I was discounting the divine downloads that God was giving me. And I was negotiating with my calling. And I was apologizing for my power. So I want to do the work with you. This devotional and all of that is not for me so much teaching you as it is just sharing what I'm walking through right now and letting you know if you're walking through something similar, you're not alone. You are not alone. So let's bounce back. Let's start finding ways to heal. And let's start being fully embracing of the calling that God has got on our lives. So again, I hope you have a great day. And that Daily Diva today was on resilience. And the verse was Romans 5:3-4. Suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And then your challenge questions to journal about and talk with God about is, how has God used adversity to strengthen your character? What spiritual muscles are you developing right now? And where do you need to be reminded that you are stronger than you think? I hope you have an amazing day today. And I will see you tomorrow morning.